the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they say in his office, and I'm going to get to go visit hopefully his home and the office, and they say in his office that there was books, different Christian books. There was the Bible. There was different. There's all Christian-based books, and he pulled from each one of them to write the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I really think that the 12 steps were divinely inspired. And, the 12 steps are not a one and done. Work them one time, get into a program, work them, and think, okay, got that done. And, it is a planned program of action that we can take for any problem that we have. Any problem that we have. It doesn't matter. And, after you work them the first time, in whatever addiction or problem that you have, and by the way, if you're multi-addicted, you get to work the 12 steps on each addiction. Like I said, it's not a one and done. And but after a while, what is written on paper in those, in the 12 steps written in the book, we begin to internalize them, and they become a working part of the mind and body. Now, as you stay around the program, you're going to experience this. Just like before, recovery, I was like Henny Penny running around. The sky's falling. Oh my God, what's going to happen? The sky is falling. And that's what we hear out in the world today. The sky is falling. It always comes around election time, and I'm not going to get into politics, but I was thinking back of when I was a young girl and a young teenager and a young adult. It was the same. Basically some of the same problems and, the division and all that. So anyway, there's nothing new under the sun. But what I want to talk about today is to have, like I said, the 12 steps become a working part of the mind and body. And if you will begin to use them like that. And and I'm not going to go exactly by this, but each 12-step program has some of its own literature. The Overeaters Anonymous has a really good little pamphlet, and it's called 12-Stepping a Problem. And I'm not going to go by that, but but anyway, if you want to, I'm just going to show you and share with you how to 12-step any problem. And and after a while it becomes quick like this. It doesn't take days or months or years. Some sponsors, and I'm not critical of anyone, how they sponsor, and that's not my deal. I'm not criticizing anyone. And I do question people who hold people up on the steps. They'll do one and then wait 2-3 months and do two and then three and then 6 months to do four. And they were not designed to do that. They were designed to work really fast, and then you begin, I keep saying this, you begin to live the process. When Bill went into, after he had his spiritual experience at John's Hospital, and he hadn't even written the book yet. He just had the experience. And he knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he needed to give away what he had found, what had been freely given to him. You know, when he had a flash of light spiritual experience in the hospital, that desire to drink was instantly removed from his brain. Now, very few addicts have that instant removal of that desire to drink or use any addiction. You pick the addiction. Most of us have what Dr. Bob had. Dr. Bob had what we call a spiritual awakening. It's a slow peeling off, like peeling off an onion. What the literature tells us is that for 2 years, Dr. Bob, who was a co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, for 2 years, Bob wanted to drink. And how he kept from drinking is he would go to work, get off of his job. I mean, he was a doctor. He'd leave his office and he would go to the bad parts of town and he would work with drunks. He would find drunks. He would find alcoholics to work with. And that's what kept him sober. Scotty, his son, was not an alcoholic. Scotty was a member of the Al-Anon Fellowship, and he's passed away, and I can say that today. And he spoke, and I heard him many times speak about how the change in the family took place after his dad sobered up. And he said he could always tell when he came in from school that he was going to be giving up his bedroom because there would be a smell in the house. Now, what Scotty said is that his dad would sober people up with formaldehyde. I don't know if that's true. I thought that's what they embalmed people with or whatever. But anyway, but there was an odor in the house of what they were using to sober up somebody, and he instantly knew that he'd be giving up his bedroom. And I'm saying all that to say it takes what it takes. Dr. Bob had to work with others instead of to keep that wanting to drink at bay. And in 2 years, that desire to drink was removed from his brain. So I just thought we would go over this process of how we can take a problem to the resolution. I don't know about any of you, but I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. We had problems, but we had no way to get to a solution. I was not taught how to deal with the solution. You know, I looked at my dad and he was violent and raging, and you know, he'd throw a fit and kick and cuss and holler and scream and you know, hurt people. That's how he dealt with problems. And then I'd look at my mother and she'd be laying on the couch taking pills and drinking the drug alcohol and feeling sorry for herself because she had the disease of addiction. And that's how she dealt with life on life's terms. And I would like to tell you that my mother found sobriety. My mother found, I put her in and out of 13 different treatment centers, and they were hard to find back then because there wasn't very many. It was mainly state hospitals. My mother lived to be 87 years old, and she was dry. She was not using a substance, but she wasn't sober. Sobriety is being restored to sanity. That's what sobriety is. So that's kind of what I want to talk about with how to 12-step any problem. You figure out what the problem is, and that is what step 1 is I admit I am powerless over, and you pick the problem. And if you don't know what the problem is, many times just go look in the mirror. And there's the problem. It's not so much that there's not problems in your family and in the world and all that, but it's how you perceive the problem, how you handle the problem or don't handle the problem. So pick any problem, whatever it is, and let's say 4th of July is coming up, you're going to be with family. Let's say you're going to be with a mother-in-law that you don't like and she doesn't like you, or y'all don't get along. I mean, this is hypothetical. Let's just pick a problem. So you're going to go to this family gathering tomorrow, and there's going to be your mother-in-law, and you're going to have to play nice whether you want to or not. So the problem, let's just say the problem is, I am powerless. I am powerless over my mother-in-law and her behavior, and I am allowing it to I'm powerless over my mother-in-law, and I am allowing it to destroy my peace of mind. So, admitted I'm powerless. Figure out what you're powerless over. Tomorrow you're going to be facing your mother-in-law. I'm powerless over her. Now, when we're saying we're powerless over something and that our life has become unmanageable because of what that something is, it's what it means is we've turned our will and our life over to the problem instead of the God of our understanding. So you must know what the problem is. Get really identify what the problem is, and then if you're powerless over coming up with the solution, that means by myself I cannot do this. And step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, when you have a problem, unless you have a mental illness, you're not totally insane. If you have an addiction, for instance, or let's go back to the mother-in-law, you get along with everyone in the world except your mother-in-law. So all that means is there's a little sliver missing in our brains, a little sliver. And it means that part of our brain needs some healing. So came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Like I said, sanity it doesn't mean we're insane in all areas, but in those little areas where we have a problem, we can go insane over that problem. So, you've heard this. We came to believe. So to believe is, Bill W. was a master of the English language, and what he said to believe is to have a suspicion. Just have a suspicion. You go to meetings, you look around, and people talk about their successes in the program and how the 12 steps have helped them and how they are used them on a daily basis, not only for their addiction to alcohol, drugs, food, whatever, but they're using the process in all addictions. So I am just losing my train of thought. That's my problem this morning. I've got a problem of losing my train of thought. But came to believe is just to have a suspicion. You look around in the rooms, and if those people are recovering, you have a suspicion that it might work for you. That's why we gather up in the fellowship, so we can see recovery. If you go to a group where everyone's sick, you might want to find you another group. Because we've got to get with people who are living this way of life. So we believe is to just have a suspicion that it will work. So here you are, you're mad at your mother-in-law, and you're powerless. By yourself you cannot do one thing to change that relationship, but you believe that God can and will help you, restore you to sanity around that relationship with your mother-in-law. So you've got the willingness to look at it. And then step 3 is made a decision. See, people can do 1 and 2. There's no recovery in step 1 or 2. What you're doing, those first two steps are fact-finding steps. You're just gathering information. Do you hear me? You're just gathering, and a lot of people will do 1 and 2. Well, I know I have the problem, and I know God can help me, and then they end there. So you're gathering facts in steps 1 and 2. So number 3 comes really the first true action. So you're going to make a decision to turn your will in your life, our will in our life, over to the care of God. Now, when we make that decision, to decide means to, we break our information down and we look at, do you want to continue down living the way you are, taking the problem of the mother-in-law? Do you want to continue to feel animosity towards your mother-in-law? Because when you feel animosity, she feels that. And Brad's shaking his head, yes. You go in there with that feeling, she picks it up, So you've got to look at, you've got to look at, you look at your facts, in step 1, do you really and truly want to give that up, that animosity towards your mother-in-law or whatever problem you have, finances, you name it, it's a problem. And so once you make that, you haven't even made the decision in step 1, you're just gathering facts 1 and 2. So step 3, you're going to make the decision. So you cut your information in half and you look at it, and if you want to stay over here in the problem, stay in the problem. No one's making you get out of the problem. You can stay there as long as you want to. But if you want a solution, I'm here to tell you, God can and will heal any area of our life that we're willing to surrender to Him. But let's think about that. We make these grandiose decisions to turn our will, and our will and our life is our thinking and our actions. So we make these grandiose plans to turn it all over to God. We make the plan, but we don't take the action. And the action is we get willing to turn our will. It's 2, we get willing. 3, we make a decision. We decide this is the way of life I want to live. And we make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. We turn this problem over to the care of God. All right, so that ought to be all of it. We got that taken care of. We're turning it over to God. But no, there's other steps. And instantly, in step 4, you're going to have to take an inventory and look at your part in this deal. If you don't look at your part, there is not going to be harmony tomorrow at the 4th of July picnic if your mother-in-law is there. You're going to have to look at your part in the situation. And that's what step 4 is. You look at your own resentments. You look at your own fear. Do you have fear of, I'll just give you an example. I don't know why I picked mother-in-law, but I will share about I was my husband's 3rd wife. I would have been 8 years old when he married the first time. 8 years old, because he was older than me. I would have been 8 years old when he married his first wife. Until my mother-in-law passed away or got into Alzheimer's, she always thought that I was keeping him from his first wife. Now, there is nothing logical in that, but she really never liked me as much as she liked his first wife. Wife number 2 was never mentioned. It was all wife number 1, and then I wouldn't even really consider wife number 3 because You know, she would have not, wife number one come visit her. I won't go into all that. So maybe this is for me to work on that resentment toward my mother-in-law, and she's been gone a long time. So one of the things we have to do is look at our side of the street. Look at the resentments, look at the fears. I had a lot of fear about her not liking me. I wanted her to like me, and that woman never took a liking to me. She didn't. She really never did. And I did everything I could, bless my heart, to get her to like me. But we inventory ourselves and we look at our character defects, not anybody else's character defects. We get to look at ours. And those character defects are, what they are? Resentment. Self-resentment. We get mad at somebody and maybe blow up at them. And now not only are we mad at them, but we're mad at ourselves, and we feel shame because we blew up at them. So now we have a resentment toward ourselves. And then if we sit at it very long, we'll think, well, they started it. If they hadn't done so and so, I wouldn't have had to say anything. And so then we get to feeling sorry for ourselves. That number one feeling is the number one, resentment, and that is part of resentment. Resentment, self-resentment, and self-pity is all resentment. And when we get to the part of feeling sorry for ourselves, that's a dangerous place for any addict or any Al-Anon, any of us, because when we feel sorry for ourselves, we can't see the truth beyond the tip of our nose. It's all about us. Woe is us. So those are character defects. Another character defect is fear. And fear, a lot of times, is false evidence appearing real. We make up so many things to get fearful about that never happen. Now, I do think that we need to have some healthy fear. And if a train's coming, wait till it passes before you try to cross the railroad track. Healthy fear. Stop at the stop sign. Get out of the burning house. That's why God gave us fear, is for protection. He gave us fear for protection. Now, we went and saw a little movie last night. If you haven't seen it, I would really encourage each of you. And I'm going to talk more about it next week, because I'm going to talk about feelings next week. But it's called, what was it called?
Inside Out Part 2.
The Inside Out Part 2. Have any of you seen it? It's an animated, if you have children, grandchildren, take them to see it. And they can explain it to you because it is a little bit hard to explain. I couldn't, Misty was there and two of my daughters, and they explained it to me as we went along because some of it's kind of deep. But anyway, it's really talking about feelings. It's a great movie. Take a grandkid, your children to it. But anyway, fear is false evidence appearing real. That's where anxiety is. Fear is about the future, whether it's 30 minutes from now or 30 days or 30 years. Fear, unless you're in a burning house, unless you're in a dangerous situation, in this moment, you're making it up. Because in this moment, and this is where recovery is about. It's a heartbeat at a time. It's about living in this moment. The big book calls living one day at a time. The big book, the Bible, talks about have no fear for tomorrow will take care of itself. Dale Carnegie talked about living in day-tight compartments. Just live in this compartment today and another compartment today. Yeah, we have to plan for the future, look at it, but don't live in fear over it. Our country right now is running on big-time fear. So false evidence appearing real. Get your facts straight when you're doing your inventory, when you're looking at the problem and looking at your part of it. And going back to this, little scenario, you can use anything, but let's say the mother-in-law. The fear is that she won't like you. Bottom line, that she won't like you. That is, everything on this side. It is about self-centeredness. When we're full of anxiety or we're full of fear, we are full of ourselves. And that's what we have to look at, is fear of ourselves. Because left to our own devices, we're bound to mess it up. So other character defects is, fear, resentment is the big one. Fear, anger, and problems in the sex area. You must look at all of those problems when you're doing an inventory of any kind. All right, so step 4, you look at your your side of the street. If you're doing a spot check inventory on a problem, you just look at, all right, I'm feeling resentment toward this woman and I feel a lot of fear. And so when you look at that, and then, call your sponsor and run that by your sponsor or share it with someone. It doesn't have to be no long conversation. This is 12-step in a problem, just like that, one right after the other. So you see your part in it. Step 5, you share it with someone else. And step 5, they're going to help you see what your character defect is. And if you keep having the same problem with other people, you can count on you're playing a huge role in that, a huge role. So step 6, your sponsor is going to help you see what your character defects are. Steps 6 and 7, we call them little bang bang steps. They work together. They're powerful steps, but they do work together. And so, they are about looking at what our character defects are. And then step 7 is being willing to let God remove those character defects. We can't remove them. We can't make ourselves good. Do y'all think you can? we can't. I mean, our behavior, we can change our behavior, but we can't do all of the work. This is a God deal. This is God can and will if we will let him. So God is the one that is going to remove those character defects from us, but he's got to have, it works in partnership. He's going to have our willingness. When you're having conflict with someone and you've got a list of all the reasons that you need to be angry at them, that is what's going to come between you and God in the solution. As long as you can justify why you're having these problems, So, step 7, God will remove those character defects from your brain if you are willing to let him. And jealousy was one of my biggest character defects. I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with jealousy, but jealousy is you talk about a green-eyed monster. It is. And I was jealous because I grew up in a system where it was just my mother and myself. Very seldom would my father or my sister enter that ring with us. I mean, I missed lots of school. I stayed home and took care of my mother. She was my everything. And so when my sister would come to visit, I would get so jealous of her. And any time that my mother spent with her, my mother was jealous. My mother taught me how to be jealous. And it is So, got married and went in with my husband. I was jealous of his work. I was jealous of his kids. I was jealous of anything that took up his time that he didn't spend with me. And that is, I'm embarrassed to even say it, that I was so self-centered. And then I would get a friend, and I'd want that friend all by myself. I wouldn't want that friend to have other friends. I didn't want to share. But I would play this silly game. I would introduce them to someone, and then if they got friendlier with that other person than they did me, then I'd be mad at both of them. I'd get jealous. So jealousy is a huge, huge deal. So doing the first 4-step, jealousy was written in red all over my 4-step. Back in those days, we didn't have some of the ways to work the steps. People just, your sponsor just told you the way that she was told to do the 4-step. And so I liked this. What she had me to do is write an autobiography starting in 5-year segments, and to get everything in my life down on paper. Well, it was 80 pages. And then she went through with a red pen, and I remember, I thought she was just going to tell me what a wonderful person I was. And when we got together, that she had marked up all of those 80 pages by circling certain things in red. And what she circled was my character defects. And I just wanted to find me a new sponsor. She hurt my last feeling. And if you don't have a sponsor like that, if you have a sponsor that just agrees with everything you do, you might want to find you another sponsor. And I loved this woman. I had her up on such a pedestal, and I wanted what she had. And she said, if you want what I have, do what I do. And she said, you're going to have to look at your character defects. And I would say, but you don't understand. I am so quiet. I am so withdrawn. I am so shy. I am so bashful. I can't hardly say a word. I don't ever bother anyone. And I was an idiot, and I was lying and didn't know it. I didn't know it. So she helped me see how that number one, I had more than one character defect, but my major, which she would circle it twice or 3 times on those 80 pages, was jealousy. And I wanted it instantly removed, and that's not what usually happens. A lot of times after you do a real thorough 4th and 5th step, and you begin to see those character defects, sometimes they will rise up and slap you right in the face, and you'll start acting out of them more than you've ever acted out of them. Because, it's almost like God says, are you sure you want to give this one up? And jealousy had ruined so many relationships. I had ruined it through jealousy. And I was really good at marking people off of my list. I just mark them off. And so that woman very graciously taught me about jealousy. And she would say every morning to get on my knees and invite God into each of those character defects. But we would take one at a time, and jealousy was a big one. Jealousy was a big one. And I remember the day jealousy was removed from my brain. I was so jealous of my husband's business and the people that was around him. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but anyway, I wouldn't let him hire a secretary without my approval. And we only had ugly secretaries. We would not have no cute secretaries. No cute secretaries ever worked at McCarty Equipment. I hope some of them aren't listening, because I'd be so jealous of them. But we had this secretary that her and my husband, they were both like stand-up comedians. And I couldn't find much to laugh about at all. But they had more fun working together, and I was jealous of that. No, she wasn't cute, but she was funny, and they had fun together. And I started praying for that one woman. My sponsor said, pray for her every day. You know the drill in the big book. Pray for them for 2 weeks, that they get everything that they need to make their life better. And so I started praying for the woman. And I knew the day that jealousy had been removed from my brain is when I walked into that office and I saw her out of the corner of my eye, and her and Ariel were in her office. And I know him, he had just told her a joke. He was a big joke teller. And he had just told her a joke, and they were in there just laughing. And I went in and I asked him what the joke was, which before I never would, because I didn't see anything funny about anything. And I laughed with him. And I began to see that woman through different eyes. And we became really, really close friends. But had God not removed that character defect of jealousy from me, I would have run that friendship. I would have managed to have gotten her fired. I would have made him fire me. I was a very powerful I'm embarrassed by it, by my behavior. But anyway, I'm just getting off on another inventory here. But you must have someone with you that can help you see your character defects. All right, so here we are down to 6 and 7, seeing the character defects. God's the only thing that can remove the character defect. And if you don't want it removed, keep acting out of it. He's a gentleman. He does not come in where he's not invited. You have to say, here it is. You've got to lay it at his feet and say, here it is, God. By myself, I cannot do anything about this. Will you help me? It's simple, but it's so difficult for those of us that are hard-headed addicts, I think. So, that's 6 and 7. And then, doing this spot check inventory, this is a quick inventory. I'm making it sound real long. But, once you do 6 and 7, you see that character defect in you, you instantly ask God to remove that, where you can go on to the next step. And step 8, you look at the person that you've harmed. You look at how you have harmed that person. And then step 9, you make amends. You make direct amends to that person. And it doesn't have to be no great big, I've been around in the program a long time, and I've been around in the profession a long time. And these are the kind of amends that I have gotten a lot. I say a lot, probably 5, 6, I don't know, maybe 10. I don't like this kind of amends. That where they come and tell you what they've done against you, and then they make amends for it. I don't like that. Like, for instance, I had a woman that used to work for me, and she came to me and she was working the steps, which I was glad. She no longer worked for me, but she wanted to make amends. And what she wanted to make amends for was all the time she had gossiped about me and all the things she had said about me. And I stopped her in the middle of it and I said, you really don't need to make amends to me. What I'm going to request that you do is maybe you go back to those people and clean that up. Because she said she had made up things about me. There was probably enough that she could have shared about me that you wouldn't have had to make them up. But anyway, she made up stuff about me. And then she wanted to come make amends to me for gossiping about me. So don't make that kind of amends. Keep your amends simple. Keep your amends simple. In that, I was taught to say, if there is anything that I have done to harm you, I want to make my amends for that. Now, sometimes we do have to get a little bit more specific, but be careful with those specifics, because sometimes we're saying those specific things in order to take their inventory. We're sneaky people, so check it out with a sponsor, and sometimes just a simple, and don't say I'm sorry. You do not need, I said I was sorry all the time. Don't say you're sorry. So, I make my amends to you for anything, any harm that I might have done to you. Keep it simple. That's step 9. Keep it simple. And then step 10 is we continue. We continue this practice. Step 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, what do? What step 10 is what I've just done. Step 10 is to spot check, do an inventory, do the first 9 steps on any problem. That's what step 10 is doing the first 9 steps over. When you do step 10, I'll give you a little example. I was working at a treatment center in town. The assistant director, we were all friends, and then we started the treatment center, and then we all kind of started working together, but he was a friend in the fellowship long before he was my boss. And so he was the assistant director, and I was the program director, and we had a difference of opinion. Now, this man was the most gentle, loving, caring man you can imagine. You see them around the rooms where they're just like, walk around with the God Spirit draped all over them. But I was a challenge to him, because I was going to school and I thought I knew something, and I was making changes too fast, and we had a disagreement about something, and that man got mad at me. He actually got angry. I provoked him to anger, and I could tell, because if he got upset, he'd always take his hands in his pockets and he was jiggle his keys and his change. Well, he was jiggling everything. And he said a few choice words to me. And I probably said a few choice words to him. But I got home, and as I left that office, I was heartsick. I was heartsick over having conflict with this beloved man, this beloved friend of mine. And so I didn't sleep any of that night. I got up and got ready for work, and I was there very early. And I noticed when I drove up that Stuart's car was in the driveway, in the parking lot. And I thought, he's here early too. And what I went for was to make amends to him. And I walked in, and he got up from his desk and started coming toward me. And he had tears in his eyes. And he started making amends to me, and I started making amends to him, because both of us had done step 10 the night before. We had both looked at our part in the situation, and we made amends to each other at the same time. We both cried together and hugged each other, and that was the last conflict we ever had. But that's the beauty of being around people who work the steps with you. They're working them but if they don't, you do this. So step 10 is really doing the first 9 steps over every day, particularly if you have a situation come up. You do that spot check inventory, and then you do figure out what the problem is. The solution is God. You make a decision. Do you want God to handle it, or do you want to try to figure it out for yourself? And then, 4, you look at your part in it. 5, you share it with another person quickly, a sponsor, and then see what character defect you are dealing with. And then 7, ask God to remove it. And 8, figure out who you need to make amends to. 9, make the amends. And you've done the first 9 steps. And step 10 is repeating those first 9 steps. And then, you know what 11 is we continue to seek prayer and meditation. Is, so figure out the specific, in step 11, it's about figuring out specific action that we can take to establish today or to re-establish or improve our conscious contact with God. That is what step 11 is today. How can we make more of a conscious contact with God? If we've strayed away from God, how can we make more a conscious contact with God? That's what step 11 is. And to improve that conscious contact. And then step 12, what is a spiritual awakening, is to have a new insight into what the problem was. By the time you 12-step a person like I started out thinking about my mother-in-law or anybody that you have conflict with, if you do this really wholeheartedly, by step 12, you're going to be seeing their good qualities. You're not going to even notice those bad qualities. You're going to see the good in them. There is some good in the worst of us, and some, some worst and the best of us. Each of us have some of both. So I don't know if any of this made sense. I did it very rapidly, but the steps work, and doing that spot check inventory on ourselves by doing those first 9 steps will resolve a lot on a daily basis. And if you're going to a family gathering tomorrow, keep that in mind. Just stop and see what is the problem and what is the solution, and are you willing to release it to God? So that's what I have. I've been preaching to the choir here. I've got some really, really savvy 12-step people on here. So any of you have anything that you want to share about what I just got through saying about the 12 steps being the best problem-solving process ever known to man, I think.